Alexa, do not disturb. I won't disturb. Sorry.
Is your Alexa trained to just your voice?
This one's in the conservatory, so it'll be all right.
Okay.
But it links to the Ring video doorbell, so when the pizza turns up in a minute, I didn't want you to have that light.
Well, we have done episodes where we've gone, Alexa, play the Final Furlong podcast, and it kicks it off. Like mad.
Alexa, stop. Let me just unplug it. That'll be safe.
Hey Siri, play the Final Furlong podcast.
As if I can hear you. Like,
there you go. It's unplugged now.
Nine winners for Ireland, 9 winners for Great Britain, and 9 winners for Willie Mullins. Welcome along to the Final Furlong podcast as we break down Cheltenham 2024. The good, the bad, the ugly, the horses we want to follow, the horses that we believed in, Katie Young, who delivered for us, the horses we didn't believe in that managed to surprise us, and something a little bit in between as well. Now, we could do a full breakdown among the team about all the things that are wrong with Cheltenham and what we would do to correct them. Maybe something like the radical ideas from Dr. Richard Newland, which is, I propose we ban the Irish. Okay. We could do something like that, but instead I'd rather just focus on all of the good things of Cheltenham 2024, which is the horses, the jockeys, and the trainers. We will do another episode where we break down the real issues facing British racing. We've done several of them. I would rather talk about all the good things in the company of Adam Mills, George Gorman, Katie Young, and me, Emmet Kennedy. Beginning with the novice hurdlers. We're going to go in divisions. We'll begin with the novice hurdlers, onto the novice chasers, championship races over hurdles, championship races over fences, so on and so forth. And kicking it off where it all began, with Slade Steel winning the Supreme Novice Hurdle. A very, very pleasing result for Team Final Furlong podcast. A kind of pleasing result for George Gorman, because he did do the Ballyburn Slade Steel double, just for the wrong races anti-post, but managed to course correct towards the end. George, what did you make of Rachel Blackmore and Slade Steel winning the Supreme?
Yeah, so it wasn't quite as sweet as it would have been at 33s and 25s in the Ballymore. I got 12s for the Supreme, so that was reasonable. I can't believe it didn't go off shorter, to be honest. Like, it was, I just, on all known form, he should have been clear favourite. I guess because he was stepping down in trip, but he's got plenty of pace. You only had to look how strongly he was travelling early. Obviously, Mystical Power looked to have taken the advantage jumping the last, but that was where the extra stamina really kicked in for Slade Steel, and he's won well in the end. I'm interested to see where they go with him next year. I presume they'll go chasing. Being by telescope, I wouldn't be backing him for anything next year just yet. I'd like to see him jump a fence first. They can be a bit straight back, the old telescopes. Firefox definitely deserves a huge mention. Like, ran into a lot of trouble in the run, and has actually finished off really well. He's got to be an Arkle horse for next year, hasn't he? Like, whether he's going to win it or not, I don't know. But you've got to think he's going there, because the one go at 2.5 didn't really work out this year. And definitely got to give mentions to 4th Asian Master under the tallest jockey in the world, Tom Costello. What a day that would have been for him and his dad Tony. Like, the horse, there are a lot of people wouldn't have given it a prayer, and he's run an absolute blinder. So that would have been really nice for them. Big old family affair for a very, very powerful family in Irish racing. But yeah, Slade Steel just too good on the day, wasn't it?
Very much so. I thought that Mark Walsh gave Mystical Power a brilliant ride, and on better ground, I think you'll see a different result at Punchestown. If he gets proper good ground at Punchestown over that trip, I'd be pretty confident he'd turn that form around. But he's only a 5-year-old. He comes there to win the race, and Slade Steel just has that little bit more up his sleeve. And Rachel got a great tune out of him. He got an RPR of 149. It's the lowest for the last 11 runnings of the Supreme. For context, the second lowest is Somerville Boy on 156 in 2018. Ballyburn's the clear standout hurdler in this division. We'll talk about him in a second. But Slade Steel already had form with him. The only 2 horses to beat him ever are Ballyburn and Dancing City, both of whom are Grade 1 winners. He's a serious prospect for chasing next season.
Is he? I'm probably in a minority of one that thinks this Supreme form is rubbish. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. I'll keep it quiet because, God, heaven forbid you criticise the Irish. But, you know, you have to look at this and just think it through. I think Ballyburn is a really, really good horse running in a pretty average year. And I'd agree with Racing Post Reigns and Time for. I don't think this is a great Supreme. I think it's an all right Supreme. I think the first two, I mean, Mystical Power doesn't look like a chaser to me. Slade Steel looks a little bit like a hurdler more than he does a chaser. Those in behind, Firefox is definitely the one to take. He's very unlucky, but something that I know from my studies of Cheltenham last week is there are some jockeys who've never quite learned how to ride the track when it's soft ground. When it's soft ground, you don't go anywhere near that inside rail from the third last to the line because it's the worst of the ground. And if you look at the way the race panned out, I just felt like Slade Steel was the best horse in the race. He deserved to win it. But I'm just wondering if he's beaten some average horses. Mystical Power, having jumped the last, I don't know what he touched in running, but it must have been very short. Slade Steel gets the better of him. Firefox meets all sort of trouble, comes through. Mr. Gift ran no sort of race whatsoever and still finished fifth. And the young lad on Asian Master, what a ride. What a ride. First ride at Cheltenham. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay slightly wide. Best ground to be on. Get a nice clear sight of my hurdles. Asian Master, and this is me getting my wife, who's very technical, to do something magical with Google Earth. And I got her to draw 2 circles on the map of Cheltenham, one on the inside rail and one roughly where I think Asian Master went and how wide he was. I reckon he covered an extra 9 metres of ground. Now, if that's the case, Asian Master would have finished in the first 2 or 3. I just can't be having this form. I just don't like it. I'm looking forward to next year because I reckon I can get a couple of these beat easy.
Coming in hot with strong opinions, Adam Mills. That's what we absolutely love. I disagree with you, by the way, but very much respect the views. I'm excited about what Slade Steel can do over fences next season. I'm also excited about a horse that we didn't see at Cheltenham, Imperial Pass. His form is just red hot now. He's narrowly beaten by Tihupu in the Hatton's Grace. He takes on State Man in the Matheson Hurdle. He buried Gaelic Warrior at Cheltenham last year. No one's talking about him for Cheltenham next season, and he will be going for the Arkle or the Turners, and we'll talk about Ballyburn in a second. Katie, are you taking an in-between approach here? Are you with George and I in terms of Slade Steel, or are you with Adam or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think it probably wasn't the best renewal coming forward for this. Like, I don't think any of these horses had actually won a Grade 1 coming into this, so that's quite unusual for this race. So yeah, I was very impressed with how well he quickened out of deep ground after pulling up kind of towards the last and having a good look around. I thought it took a real good horse to kind of quicken away and run straight through the line. I thought that was really impressive, and it takes a fair horse to do that. I think conditions kind of played into his favour. The heavy ground made it a stamina test, and he's been very, very impressive on heavy and soft ground this season. He has won on good to yielding ground before, but I think he is a heavy ground horse, and I just wonder, could he replicate that on good ground? I thought Mystical Power ran a really good race as well. He jumped much better. I thought coming into this that the stronger pace would suit him and help with his jump, and I thought it did exactly that. The hood helped. It was with him settling wise. He looked much more in control. The stronger pace would have helped that. I'm not sure whether they will keep that hood on. I think that might have just been put on for the occasion. Horses can get very worked up going to Cheltenham with the travelling over, and it might have just tipped him over the edge, but wouldn't be surprised if that came back off him in the future going forward. But I don't think he would have wanted that ground to come up anywhere near as soft as it did. I just think it blunted his speed, and that just caught him out after the last. I actually thought he ran really well on heavy ground and ran well the way he did. He was kind of the horse I'd be taking out of this going forward. He would have learnt plenty from that again. And I wouldn't be surprised if he could reverse the form with Slade Steel on better ground at Punchestown. And it'd be really interesting to see how they fare on better ground.
I would imagine that Ballyburn and Mystical Power will be kept separate one another. There's a world, by the way, where Tully Hill gets an easy lead out in front of Punchestown and bounces back to better form. He was second to A Dream to Share there last season. There's another horse no one's talking about. A Dream to Share will be in Novice Hurdles next season, and his form with Fact to File is absolutely red hot. Just on what Adam was saying about Mystical Power, Katie, for next season, given his pedigree, like surely he's not a chaser. He's a Galileo out of any power. He must be a hurdler.
Yeah, I think he's probably a little bit immature as well to be going over fences with him probably next season still. I think he's still a lot of learning to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did keep him over hurdlers again, just to get that little bit more experience into him will do him no harm. But for the foreseeable, definitely looks like a hurdler, maybe in a couple of seasons' time when he's kind of ironed everything out that he needed to. He might make a chaser, but for the time being, definitely would like to see him stay over hurdles.
Ballyburn. There's no second in this race. Like Jimmy DeSoy's run a monster race, but there is no second. It's him. He's the king of this division. He is clearly the best novice hurdler by some way. And if there was some rule in which he could run on all three, he'd have won all three novice hurdles. If he identified as a filly, he'd have won the Filly and Mare's novice hurdle as well. He's just in a completely different league, George.
Yeah, I think the biggest compliment you can pay to Ballyburn here is all the horses that were up with Ballyburn have finished 4th through 6th, pulled up. But the 2nd and the 3rd have sat miles off the pace, and that's the only reason they were even able to finish 2nd or 3rd distantly to him. Like, the only horse that was able to go Ballyburn's pace here was Ballyburn, which I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay. I love his head carriage. I know people think he's a bit keen now. I think that's going to stand to him when he goes chasing. Like, he's got his head down. He's looking where he's going. Look, on everything we've seen, he's going to be unstoppable wherever he goes next.
He has won this in a time 9.48 seconds quicker than Langer Dan in the Coral Cup, carrying only 1 pound less. That translates to 40 lengths superior to Langer Dan. Like, Adam, you're more into sectional times and speed figures than me, but he's run to... Langer Dan won the Coral Cup on an RPR of 148. Ballyburn ran to 168. He's a monstrosity of a horse.
Yeah, he's a beast, and this time figure is absolutely off the charts type quick. I mean, to put it into context, I tried to run the two races side by side. I mean, I reckon Jimmy DeSoy, they must be kicking themselves because he would technically have won the Coral Cup if you run it exactly next to each other. It's a bit 50-50 on that, obviously, because the way Jimmy DeSoy was ridden, but that's how fast it was. I mean, Ballyburn's final circuit I've got at 195.16 seconds. State Man took 200 seconds, so he's 5 seconds quicker than State Man over the last circuit. Now, you've got to allow for the fact that State Man was in a race with much lower opposition, so he wasn't positioned to run a fast time. But even though Ballyburn covered a further distance, if we just compare the final circuit, which is from the hurdle in front of the stands, right around the track and then back across the winning line, Ballyburn is still 3.28 seconds faster than Slade Steel, having covered 5 furlongs further than him over the course of the race. I mean, this time figure is enormous. He's run a massive race. You can't find him. Wherever he goes next year, he's going to have a right chance. I think they'll go chase him because he's 6. If you go hurdling at 7 and it doesn't work, or you bump into Constitution Hill, then he's 8 novice chasing, 9 for a Gold Cup. It's a bit risky. I think novice chasing would be the way, so that when Galopin de Champs has completed his hat-trick, they've got a ready-made replacement. The one horse in this race I do want to give a shout-out to. Everyone will have written off Predator's Gold as being a massive disappointment because he finished 5th. But this horse absolutely hated the hill. He hated it, hated every moment of it. He would never have beaten Ballyburn, not for a million years, nor will he ever. But if you watch this horse, he's travelling okay. And then when they get to the top of the hill, you see him physically shorten his stride. He doesn't want to go down the slope. He goes down the slope under a couple of urgings. He gets the 3rd last all wrong, meets it on a completely wrong stride. And he meets the 2nd last wrong as well, and he's allowed just to make his own way home when he's beaten. This is not the true Predator's Gold. So he'll be a much bigger price than he should be next time, particularly if he's on a flat track. But he wouldn't have beaten Ballyburn in a taxi. This horse is just phenomenal time. It's one of those times when I had to do it twice. And I'm like, no, that time is right. It was absolutely electric.
Timeform rated Stateman 167. They rated Lossiemouth 154. We'll come to her later on. Ballyburn 162p. We have no idea where the ceiling is for this guy's level. Like, we're pretty certain that's as good as Stateman is. That race was run, obviously, in a way that turned into a sprint finish. To compare him to the others, they gave Slade Steel 150 plus. We have no idea where the ceiling is. He also, Katie, has a very low head carriage, which is something that Classical Dream had as well. And my understanding is that's considered to be a sign that a horse would be even better over fences. And if that's the truth, if he is going to be even better over fences than he is over hurdles, then dearie me, everybody's got to get out of his way.
Yeah, no, he was extremely impressive. I love the way he carries his head. I actually love riding horses that have a low head carriage. They always appear to be keener than they actually are, but it's just the way they gallop, and it's a lovely way of galloping. I just think he has everything: jumps, travels, and just carries Paul Town everywhere into the race. I think he's an out-and-out galloper, but I think he does have the pace to be a champion hurdle contender as well. I hope they go the chasing route with him. I think it's probably the right route for him to go down for the long run. I do think he could probably be a contender in a champion hurdle. I don't think he'll be out short of pace whatsoever, but I just think he's bred to be a chaser. And I hope that's where they go with him. He's just an absolute freak, isn't he?
I guess it might very well be in Willie's mind that could he emulate what his father achieved with Don Run? And is there a horse that he's able to do that with? Like, they wanted to do it with Annie Power. She never ran again after the Aintree hurdle, so perhaps this is the fella they want to do it with. But just the way, hearing all of you talk, as much as it's exciting to go and take on Constitution Hill next season and take on Stateman and Lossiemouth, like, they've got plenty for the champion hurdle. They don't need to do it. Just get him over a fence. And I think Adam's assessment of Galopin Des Champs will hopefully have done the hat-trick. Maybe Factifile will beat him. But whichever way that goes, you then have the next generation coming through and a ready to go monstrosity of a racehorse. There's nobody will touch him over fences next season. Does anybody want to make a case for Il Atlantique, or can we just move on to the potato race? No hands going up there at all. Take that, Tony Bloom. I told you, he's an old soft joke. You'll find nothing in a finish. And he found nothing in a finish. Couldn't even beat poor old Jimmy DeSoy. Stellar Story. So this was a bit of an upset. Delighted for Sam Ewing. God, for poor old Keelan Woods, Ben Pauling, and Harry Redknapp. The jukebox man has run an absolute blinder, but he did not jump the last very well, and Sam Ewing got a great tune at a Stellar Story towards the end. Katie, there had been a bit of talk that there was a Gordon Elliott horse for Gigginstown coming into this race that was working brilliantly. Problem is, we didn't know it was Stellar Story.
Yeah, I thought Gordon might win this renewal for the first time. Not with this one, however. I was looking towards Search for Glory at a big price, as again, this kind of race has thrown up a horse that at a longer price and probably does pay to kind of look at that end of the betting. I just think Sam gave him a brilliant ride. It paid to be at the front end of the pace, and he just outstayed the runner-up in the end. I think he's probably a horse that's probably taken a little bit of time to adjust. But if you do look back through his form, like he wasn't far behind Slade Steel in the Grade 2 at Navan, probably over a trip that's probably a little bit too short for him. That's reading really well now. I think he could be a very, very good chaser. He's a half-brother to Storyteller, who'd fared best in the same chase division. And I would expect there'll be more things to come from him over fences for sure. This type of race kind of throws up nice staying novice chases, and I think you only have to look through the previous winners of this to kind of see where he might fare out, and hopefully Gordon might have a nice novice chaser on his hands next season. In the
20-year history of this race, there's only been 4 winning favourites, and Monkfish at 5-1, Brizzini Breeze 7-1, Weapons Amnesty, Neptune Calange, and Moulin Riche for Francois Dumont, the first winner of the race. They're the only single-figure priced horses. Everything else is an outsider. So you had the right idea, Katie. We just went with the wrong horse. Adam, what did you make of the potato race?
Well, the jukebox man getting beat is still hurting. It's still sore. But, these things happen. These things happen. I forgot to put a lane running. Normally, I'd always put a lane running. But I thought, oh, this thing's a rag. It's just going to place. Didn't think he'd actually keep going. I mean, the one thing I would say is the 2 lads on the front end got the fractions right, and those in behind, I almost feel like they looked and thought they're outsiders. They'll come back. Look at the ground. They'll come back. And maybe maybe there's a little bit from Paul Town in that he's just ridden absurd in the county hurdle where the fields come back and he's sighed through them and he's thinking, don't worry, we'll pick them up. But it seemed obvious to me at the second last that these two weren't stopping. They're the two stayers to take from it. Dancing City comes out quite well as sort of best of the rest. I'm not really sure yet how this form will work out, but you can't fault the winner, really. I mean, the Jukebox Man, if he was mine, I'd be thinking there's loads of 3-mile graded hurdles in the UK that are incredibly weak and full of veterans. And, we've got to surely be thinking about that as an option. But Stella Story, you can't really fault him. I wouldn't bet against him to do it again. I don't think this was a fluke. I think he's an absolute dour stayer. He was able to go the pace with the first two. The others in behind, I think you just got to give them all a pass.
I actually wonder, will Willie Mullins look at this with Dancing City and think, could go chasing with you, or I could go for those very weak but very, very valuable Grade 1 hurdles in Britain. And there's plenty of them in Ireland as well. And just keep you as a staying hurdler. Because I think he's better than that, Dancing City. He wouldn't have won on the day, but just it was really attritional ground. And he's done very, very well to get third. But on a better surface, I think he'd be an interesting player. And Willie's got to be looking at his awesome team of horses and trying to figure out who can I have here that can be dusted off the shelf and sent down the staying hurdle route next season. And maybe he'd be one of them. George, what did you make of the potato race?
Yeah, well, it hurt quite a lot, to be honest. The amount of times I nearly backed this horse by accident, looking for the Gordon Elliott Jigginstown horse that starts with an S and ends in Nori. Yeah, it definitely hurt. You know what? When one of my fancies came out of the boys hurdle, the conditional jockeys hurdle, this horse then went in as my next fancy for that, and then obviously he was taken out of it. And despite all that, I never even stuck a quid on him. But yeah, never mind. It's not all about the betting, is it? But you got to feel for Keelan Woods, haven't you? He's done everything right on this horse, bar maybe give him a kick in the guts going down to the last. But even he probably has stopped even worse. Then, do you know what I mean? It's one of those. The momentum that you lose by popping the last. Is that then counteracted by flying the last and trying to steam up the hill even faster? You might just stop quicker. I struggle for horses to take out of this, really, to be honest. Gidley Park will be a nice chaser next year. Obviously, by walking the park, probably back to 2 mile 4 for now. He was plenty keen enough here. He'll win some decent novice chases in England, probably some graded ones. Then come up short against the Irish, come Cheltenham. Yeah, I struggle with this, really. Dancing City, I don't really know a whole lot about Stallion. He's the best jumper by the Stallion. Yeah, I really struggled to sort of find the horse that I'm going to take forward from this. But maybe the Jukebox Man, to be honest. He certainly looks like he'll jump a fence. If I ask, who's had plenty of decent chases over the years, isn't he? Harper's Brook. There have been a few of them anyway. But that might be the horse I take out of it, to be honest, is the Unlucky Loser. I know he's given a good ride to finish second, but he still has to have the ability to go there and do it.
There is a British victory, though, over novice hurdles for Jeremy Scott with Golden Ace, who, after Daiserinos came out, it was absolutely guaranteed that this was going to be another win for Ireland. It was either going to be Gordon or Willie, and Jeremy Scott had other ideas. Katie, this was really terrific stuff. I'm delighted for Lorcan Williams. I really like Lorcan. I think he's a fantastic jockey and a really decent young man as well. So I'm really pleased to see him in the winner's enclosure at Cheltenham, and he's given this horse a terrific ride. And Jeremy Scott is one of the most likeable trainers in the business.
Yeah, no, I think the best horse won on the day here, and I think everything looked relatively simple for her. I don't know if... I still think Brighterdaysahead is probably the best horse in this race, and probably be the best horse to come out of this race. I just don't think Plan A went quite right for Jack on the day. I thought she handled the ground no problem. I just don't think she handled the way the race panned out. They went very steady gallop which turned into a sprint. I don't think that kind of suited her at all. I thought she was using up way too much energy throughout the race, and she looked quite green coming off the bridle up to the last. Probably for the first time, I'd say. I thought she plugged on again towards the line, but she just didn't have enough boot that Golden Ace did. I think she could be a very good horse. She was rated £19 inferior to her coming into this, so I'm hoping that there is more to come from her again, but I still think Brighter Days Ahead is the one to come out of this. And I just wonder whether Jack was in a little bit of a tricky situation here, because to me, he looked as though he was adamant about following Paul and keeping a close eye on what Paul was doing throughout the race. And I think by doing that, maybe the race probably lacked the strong pace, which is what that filly needed. But yeah, I think I was very impressed with both of them, and still very sweet on Brighter Days Ahead.
She gave the winner £5, which might have made all the difference here, to be fair. Yeah. And it's, as you're saying, Kitty, it turned into a sprint finish, which just is not going to suit her. That being said, Lorcan and Jeremy get the prize, and Golden Ace very much deserves it. These golden horns, by the way. I mean, get your mare to Golden Horn. He has thrown up some nice horses. I would imagine, though, Adam, in a year's time, Brighter Days Ahead will be sent off favourite for the Mare's Chase, and she'll win it. Maybe. I don't know. I want to see her. I'm still so disappointed with Jade De Grugy, but she was rancid. And I've tried to make as many excuses as I can. And yes, clearly Paul Townend should know better than to go down the centre of the track. What are you doing, you fool? Get on the outside rail. But, you know, the minute she squeezed up, she's beaten. And this race had a finishing speed percentage of 111.2, which means they were going 10% faster in the final half a mile than they were for the rest of the race. It should have suited Jade De Grugy. She's the fastest horse, and she was just terrible. So I'll write her off, I think. Brighter Days Ahead. If they went to the Mare's Chase, would she? Depends on the ground. I think Limerick Lace is a serious tool, and I wouldn't necessarily be certain that Brighter Days Ahead would beat her as a novice. But I really like the winner. I just think there's no fluke about this. Golden Ace has got good bumper form. She'd won 2 novice hurdles as easy as you like. Yes, the race maybe suited her speed, but coming between the last two, like, she's absolutely tanking. And the others are all at it. And they've got good form. Yeah, you can make the case for £5, but I think if they met over 2 miles again, Golden Ace would uphold this form. Now, Brighter Days Ahead is clearly the better prospect. She'll stay further. And with Brighter Days Ahead, they've got the other option. They could look at the Mare's Hurdle. They may not go chasing. They might look at the Mare's Hurdle. Golden Ace is, to my eye at least, is a 2-miler. But I don't think this is the sort of the fluke it seems. I think if Golden Ace was with Nikki Henderson, she'd have gone off 5-1. Well, maybe not Nikki last week. That's a bad example. But, you know, if she was with a champion trainer, she'd have probably been half the price, because her form with Dysart Enos was really close. I've watched back this race 4 or 5 times, and I just think maybe there's a case that Jack and Paul spent so much time looking at each other, they forgot to ride the race properly. But at the same time, you know, from the second last to the line on attritional ground, Golden Ace is the last one off the bit. She's travelling all over them, and she holds off Brighter Days Ahead. This is a seriously good mare. What they do with her next year, I'm not sure. But if they stick to hurdles, I mean, there are 2-mile races in Britain where if you avoid Constitution Hill, she'll have penalty kicks. Constitution Hill aside, and who knows, there's talk from Nikki Henderson today. Punchestown is very much on the agenda. Please, Nikki. Please, Nikki. Bring him over and show the world that you have the better horse. Crush State Man. Make a point, and then run him in everything next year. Fighting Fifth, Christmas Hurdle. Bring him to Ireland for the Irish Champion Hurdle. Wrapping your horses in cotton wool for the whole season. It doesn't do anybody any favours, and it certainly doesn't work if your horses then aren't right for Cheltenham. I felt terribly sorry for him last week. Obviously, Britain would have performed an awful lot better had he been there, but run him at Punchestown. I'll believe it when I see it. Jade De Grugy, I think she was a bit unlucky with how this race panned out, particularly given the fact that she was short a room at a vital stage, almost got taken out, and then wasn't Paul's best effort.
I do agree with that. I just say quickly on Constitution Hill, I did see someone on Twitter comment on the thing with Nikki saying he's taking the horse to Punchestown, saying it's more likely that Goshen wins the champion chase than that Constitution Hill ever sets foot in Ireland. Which, it tickled me. I wish I could give him credit. I can't remember who it is, but I'm sure you can find it. But look, I think Golden Ace was the quickest horse in this race. I don't think she was the best. Like, at the weights, she finishes fourth off level weights. She's a Golden Horn, beating a Cat Guard, a Walk in the Park, and a Dr. Dino. Like, she's got a lot of pace. I do slightly buy into the sort of Jack and Paul got each other beaten. I think Paul's jumped off, seen Victoria Milano jump off at a good pace. Thought, excellent, I've got some cover here. And then it's gone way too quick. And then he's out in no man's land, having his arms pulled out. He's taking a big old pull. Jack's taking a pull as well, like to stay with him, to let something come round the outside. Bird Buster's come round. Jack's fought for half a second. Oh, I've got some cover here now. This is great. And then when he's gone to rail, he's gone, even better. Even better, because now I can keep Paul in the whole way. Paul's forced to go down the inner to get a run. Has to switch and then gets his nose cut off, jumping 2 out. If you look where he lands after 2 out compared to where he is jumping the last, Paul's made up a lot of ground. I struggle to say Jade De Grugy wasn't the best horse in this race. Like, she's got tired late on, but look, she's had to make a lot of ground very quickly between the last 2 hurdles. I really am of the opinion Jade De Grugy was the best horse in this race and was very unlucky. And certainly Jack Kennedy, if he was riding his own race, I think you'd have gone on. Like, that you want to turn it into a stamina test, don't you, on Brighter Days Ahead, I'd have thought. But he's not gone on because he's got the one horse he thinks he has to beat, he's got in the pocket. So why would he go on when he can just keep Paul there? At least force him to run on the worst part of the track. This was disappointing, sort of. Obviously, it's a disappointing outcome for me personally. I thought it was a disappointing sort of race in general. Obviously, fantastic for Jeremy Scott, fantastic for Lorcan Williams. Like, Jeremy is very capable when he gets the horses. Melodic Rendezvous, Dashel Drasher, and they said it was one of the biggest cheers of the day when this horse came in, come back into the paddock. But yeah, I think Jade De Grugy was the best horse in this race. Maybe I'll be proven to be wrong in the fullness of time. I do think the penalty system wants scrapping because
it's ridiculous.
It was meant to force these horses into the Supreme and the Ballymore, and it hasn't. And now you've got the horse that's 4th best at the weights winning it. So I think if it's not going to push them into the other races, you've got to scrap it, because you can't have championship novice races at Cheltenham where the best horse isn't winning.
But what's the point in a horse winning a grade 2 then having to carry a penalty in a grade 2? Like, it's absolute insanity. It's complete lunacy. And hey, if you want these horses running in the Supreme, then don't have a mare's novice hurdle. Well, what do we have it for? Yeah. What is the point of this race? It's great for Britain. They've now won 3 in a row.
Make it a handicap or don't.
Exactly. You're either in or you're out. It's a handicap or it's not. It's a graded race with no penalty structure. And just, look, we're not talking about if you've won a grade 1 that you just get in lightly. No. But if you've won a grade 3 and you have to carry a penalty, win a grade 2, you have to carry... It's utter madness. Complete and total madness. We were talking about, in the build-up to this, was Fergal O'Brien wrong to be taking the really easy route with Daiserinos to ensure that she wouldn't have a penalty for this race, and would that backfire? Jeremy Scott took her to 2 novice hurdles at Taunton. Who knows how much better she could be? Like, it's tremendous stuff from him. Great stuff from Golden Ace. Don't forget Daiserinos. I felt really sorry for Fergal O'Brien. Obviously, Crambo hasn't fired in the stairs hurdle. Maybe that's as good as he is. I suspect he's an awful lot better than that. And for whatever reason, just didn't quite fire. And bumper form doesn't always translate over hurdles, as we've seen over the years. But full credit to Jeremy Scott and Lorcan Williams on the day. It's their horse who's won, and won very, very well. But don't forget about Daiserinos for those 2-mile hurdles next season as well. Finally, Triumph Hurdle with Sergino on the sidelines. It was always going to be Willie Mullins who won it. Majborough, but in the end, Katie, he's just much the best. And Adam and I were talking about this race the night before, and I was making the point that the RPR he had ran to on debut, if he made the same improvement from debut that Bunting did and Cargies did from their first starts, then that was going to make him really hard to beat. And I still talked myself out of backing him.
Yeah, I think you had to kind of make note of his really good Irish debut, pitched in a grade 1 at the deep end, and he wasn't beaten all that far. You can take a horse coming from France, take a few runs for them to settle in and accustom to their new way of life. And I was just really taken by his performance at the Dublin Racing Festival. And I thought the stiff test at Cheltenham would only pay dividends to him. And I think that's what we've seen on Friday. The stiff finish and where stamina had to come into play saw him out best. Cargies looked the winner turning in. She was cantering everywhere. I don't think Danny could believe how well he was travelling. And within a matter of strides, once Mark got stuck into Majborough, all he did was just stay on up that hill. And Cargies just didn't have that stamina that Majborough did. I think the best thing about this horse is a lot of these juveniles, we see their best year being this year, and we might not see them fulfill their potential that we might have seen or potentially could have done in this year. What I think and what I really like about him is I think there's better things to come from him going forward. I think they're only just scratching the surface with him. And I think for a 4-year-old, like, he's huge and he has so much scope. His jumping is so good. He's going to make a better chaser. I'm not sure what their plan with him is, what they're going to do with him next year. It'll be interesting to see what they do, whether they take, whether they go down that novice chasing route and get the £7. I don't think he needs it, but I don't know what he's going to do over hurdles either. Now, he looks more of a stayer than a 2-miler. Do they pitch him in as a staying hurdle contender? I just don't know. But
chasing, I think.
Yeah, but I'd say they'll probably whittle down to what their team looks like next year. I don't think they'll be kind of making a decision on it until probably the autumn time to see how he fares after his break, because you probably find out a lot then when they come back into training. Has he filled out? Has he improved from this season? So I think they'll probably leave their decision late. But I think he might enjoy nicer ground in time. However, I don't think this year for sure whether good ground would play to his strengths. I think it's a little bit too big. I just wonder whether good ground might be a hindrance more than a help to him this season. But going forward in time, I think he might be a player on good ground. But I'd say for now they'll be minding him and keeping him to softer ground. So it'll be interesting to see whether he does turn up at Punchestown if it is better ground.
The impression I got with Majborough is they're going to keep him over hurdles next season, because Willie really doesn't want to go novice chasing with a 5-year-old. They did it with Blood Destiny, and I think he might regret it.
It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, Katie. And he might very well win the Willow Worm Gold Cup. Maybe. We'll see. He was very good the other day, but the impression I was getting was this fella's a chaser, he's a Gold Cup horse, and they're just going to mind him next year.
Mind him. Yeah.
I wouldn't even have him on my mind for Cheltenham next season.
No.
Of any case.
I was thinking.
You're not going to run him in a stairs at 5. No. You could, but you're not going to do that. And what, do you put him in a champion hurdle? Maybe. Doesn't seem like what he's built for, though. And he's going to be too high for a Coral Cup. So I'd say you just take it softly with him next year and come back to Cheltenham in 2 years' time. That's what I would think, but Adam might think differently. You're the expert when it comes to these ex-French horses coming to the Triumph Hurdle. You're already looking on the tweet machine talking about potential horses for the Triumph Hurdle next season. A couple of exciting horses that you've been seeing winning in the French provinces. But what was your overall assessment of Majborough v Cargies versus Salver?
I thought I had him. I thought, you know, so Gino's not here. Don't worry. Cargies is going to do the job. And she just got outstayed. And he's wonderful, really, because I would have had Danny as 1 to 10 on coming down to the last. He looked to have his number. He had the rail. And Majborough then, within 3 strides, I thought, oh, crap, we're just going to get the each-way money. And it's just the way it is. But, I mean, Majborough is just, that's phenomenal. They're miles clear of the rest. Salver needs huge credit because he's run a massive race in 3rd. you know, that if they use his 4-year-old allowance next season, he's going to do some damage in the UK at least. I think Katie's right. I'd be surprised if he goes to Punchestown if it's good ground. In fact, I think if it was good ground, I think Carguest might do him. I think she's faster than he is. She's faster than he is, but he's got much more scope. And you've got to also remember, Carguest is very streetwise. She was a Grade 3 winner last May at the time when Majborough was just about being ready for his debut. So he's got loads more improvement over her. But I guess in my head, I'm sort of looking at Majborough and thinking, would they go novice chasing? Surely they'll pop him over a fence at home at least and just see what he shapes like. The problem is, if you're not going to go novice chasing, what are you going to do next season? You're going to bump heads with State Man and Constitution Hill, or are you going to try and just give him a really quiet campaign where you pick up those sort of Grade 3 races that no one really pays much attention to? The other thing they could do if they wanted to go really left field is there's a very valuable Grade 1 at Auteuil in November, which Gilles Francais won. It's a 4-year-old Grade 1. They could do that. It'd be very unwilly. He doesn't normally turn up for the November meeting, only in May. But if you think about how he plans his horses, Carguest looks, if I was pricing up the Grade 1 for 4-year-olds at Auteuil in May, Carguest would be about 1 to 3. So I'd imagine that's, you know, he won it last year with Gala Marceau. Why wouldn't he go there? He sent Zarek the Brave to the same race. That's the race for Carguest. If Punchestown came up soft, you could run Majborough, you could run one of his other also-rans. I'm not Willie's race planner, but I've got loads of French ideas if you're watching. But that would be one option to suggest, if they do want to keep hurdling, is they could pick and choose their targets. But if he was mine, I'd be going novice chasing. Just give it a go. You get £7 as a 4-year-old. What have they got to lose, really? If they see him as a Gold Cup horse, crack on with it. Because if you waste the season over hurdles, the only thing you're going to gain is more experience. You're not going to necessarily, he's not going to win a champion hurdle. I don't think anyone thinks that's a serious target. For Carguest, I love her to pieces. And when she runs Auteuil in May, I'll back her whatever price she is. But that's where I'll stop, because I think Carguest peaked last Friday. I think that was her career best by a mile. And I'm not sure there's that much more improvement to come. And I'd be a little bit wary that she's had a long campaign as a 3-year-old. She's done brilliantly. But she would look more of a Gala Marceau type of, I'm going to hit a peak at this kind of age. Whereas I think Majborough is the one you'd think in 2 or 3 years' time, he's going to be a Grade 1 chaser.
And Carguest had already had 3 runs over hurdles in France as well. It's not like she's coming off the flat. So, yeah, she's been kept going, to be fair. Very interested in your thoughts on Salvatore Mundi. So he's made his stable debut. He's beaten 17 lengths. He's finished 6th overall. He retains his novice status. What do you think we'll see of him next season?
I think you'll see a better horse. I think it was tilting at windmills to run him in the Triumph. But the other thing that you have to bear in mind, really, is they probably take the view, well, he's still a novice. So we'll run him in all the Grade 1s now. Let's give him loads of experience, even if he finishes down the field. Because the worst thing that can happen is he'll win a Grade 1. And if he doesn't, well, we can keep him to novice status. There's nothing to worry about there. They've also got another one called Amsterdam, who isn't a novice, also owned by the Donnellys. So they've got options. I think the Fairy House race might be on his agenda. The one thing I would say about Salvatore Mundi is in both races, he hasn't looked like a 2-mile horse. If you watch back the pre-Wild Monarch, he's on and off the bridle and he works really hard to get on terms with Gino. But then he's outpaced after the last. He's not stopping, he's just outpaced. I've had several people send me DMs and say, oh, he's a shoo-in. He's got to be an each-way bet for the Supreme. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I wonder if he's maybe a Ballymore type. He ran as I thought he would, which was he went okay to a point, but it was all too much too soon. I don't really get too excited about Cheltenham 12 months in advance. I certainly wouldn't be backing him for novice hurdle, but I would think he might be one who needs a bit more than 2 miles.
Yeah, that was my reading of him as well. He's by the same sire as Allaho and Epatante. Obviously, Epatante was a really good champion hurdle winner for Nicky Anderson. Did us a massive favour on this show. Jess Stafford and myself put him up at 20s, or her up at 20s even. Although maybe she identifies as a male, who knows. But Allaho clearly bested intermediate trips and out of a Saint-to-Saint mare as well. Like bred for more intermediate trips and travels like that as well. George, terrific effort from the Moore team with Salver. Gavin Sheehan got a great tune out of him. I'm sure that was one you were toasting on Friday night?
Yeah. Like Gavin Sheehan gave him a fantastic ride. Like the way he rode him, he couldn't afford to miss, and he didn't miss a single hurdle. Like Gavin was really, really good on him. And he was like, look, I know he was well beat in the end, but he actually stayed on again up the hill. Like he'll be better over a bit of a trip next year. I think they're going to stay over hurdles with him, purely because, well, I'd say last time we were in this position was with Porticello, who obviously he went to stay over hurdles for the season and sadly got killed on the race course. But the one before that was Nassalam. We went chasing with him as a 4-year-old, and he won a grade 2, but he was very lucky at Newbury that day. So a horse, was it For Pleasure? Maybe, I think one of them, unseated, miles in front of him. And then he just went missing from December onwards, and it carried on into the next season. We've only just got him back this season. So I would say Salva's quite a similar type. He's a little bit faster than Nassalam, but I'd say he's probably going to stay over hurdles and just mind him for a year. Maybe running a few decent handicaps. God, he's rated 128. He's rated 143 now. God, he'd have hosed up in the Fred Winter, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Oh dear. But the only thing I will say is this course, the new course, would have suited him better probably than the old course would have, based on how he ran. So I can see the logic in running him there. But God, that mark's gone now, isn't it? Yeah, Majborough wouldn't be the highest rating you've ever seen for Triumph Hurdle winner, 145. I think Goshen got about £10 higher just for unseating at the last. But what impressed me with him is he looks all over a chaser. Like the fact that clearly the best is yet to come with him and he's still winning a Triumph Hurdle is very impressive. It's nothing that you guys haven't said. But yeah, Cargies, full speed. I just keep thinking about the Fred Winter with Salva, really. He's come out of the race very well. I don't know if he'll run again. It'll be ground dependent.
If it makes you feel better, Lark in the Morning has bolted up after being pulled out several times due to unsuitable ground. On unsuitable ground. So who knows what he would have pulled out when Salva came to him. Like, he's clearly a graded horse masquerading in a handicap. Like, Adam, what would you have rated Lark in the Morning, and what would you say, where would he have finished in the Triumph Hurdle had he translated into the Grade 1?
6th or 7th.
Would he have beaten Nürburgring?
I don't think Nürburgring got the greatest of rides, if I'm honest. But I mean, I've made this mistake in the past of thinking the Boodles is a really good race. And with the possible exception of Gaelic Warrior, it's probably not. And having watched back that Boodles, I thought, well, you know, any Irishman who complains about handicap plots of Dan Skelton should have a look at Lark in the Morning. But I think no, that's true, though, isn't it? You can't say I was pulled out.
No, you're right. You are right.
Bolts up. It's
He's
terrible.
not an O'Brien.
It's you know, I think looking at the Boodles is a handicap, and Lark in the Morning, as well as he ran, was well suited by the way the Boodles played out. He's well suited by the old course. That Triumph Hurdle was a war of attrition. The time was 7 seconds faster than the County Hurdle. This was an absolute slog, and Flatbread and Boodles horses would have struggled to go with them. This is really, really fast, and it's a long end-to-end gallop. The times, actually, the final circuit time compares pretty well with the County Hurdle winner, Absurd. Absurd is much quicker from the second last to the line, understandably, because of the way he finished. But Majborough gets to the second last 3.2 seconds quicker than Absurd by my hand timings. So, you know, that's bonkers. They've gone so hard that Triumph Hurdle. I mean, the other thing to say about this race is this may well have left a mark on a few of them. These are young, inexperienced juveniles who've gone championship pace. But no, in answer to your question, the Boodles horse would have been lucky to finish in the first 5.